On the high volcanic peaks of Hawaii, the air is thin and bitter, a freezing shroud that clings to the white domes of the Pan-STARRS Observatory. It is a moonless night in December 2039. Inside the darkened chamber there is no sound but the rhythmic hum of cooling systems and the faint mechanical whine of the telescope as it tracks the turning of the celestial sphere. An astronomer sits before a glowing screen, a solitary sentinel in the dark. On the display, amidst a sea of static and distant suns, a tiny, unblinking point of light moves with a quiet, terrifying precision. This is not a star, nor is it a flickering satellite of human design. It is asteroid AT-39, a remnant of the primordial chaos, and it is following a path written in the cold, unyielding language of gravity. We often imagine our solar system as a sanctuary, a home nestled in the vastness of the cosmos. But to the eyes of physics, it is something much more desolate. It's a grinding clockwork of iron, rock, and ice, a ruthless machine that has been in motion for billions of years. In this mechanism, human life is not a chosen guest, but an accidental passenger, clinging to a spinning marble as the heavy gears of the planets turn in the dark. The approach of AT-39 is not an act of malice, it is the inexorable result of motion. The machine is merely doing what it was designed to do, indifferent to the fragile biological film that covers the third world from the sun. The journey of this object into our awareness began years earlier, in the year 2023. During that epoch, the automated surveys of the Pan-STARRS system acted as the first diagnostic sensors for the machine. These telescopes did not search for beauty. They scanned the abyss for irregularities, looking for any stray piece of debris that might interfere with the smooth rotation of the planetary gears. It was like a master watchmaker peering into a complex gearbox and identifying a single loose tooth. When AT-39 was first catalogued, its luminosity and distance were entered into the cold equations of celestial mechanics. To the universe, these were merely variables in a vacuum, data points in a ledger that has no column for mercy. The detection did not ripple through the cosmos, the stars did not blink. The void remained silent, for the universe does not feel the approach of a catastrophe, it only calculates it. As the years progressed, the geometry of the encounter began to tighten. By late 2039, the asteroid was approaching a gravitational keyhole, a precise and invisible notch in the gear of the Earth's orbit. Gravity is the invisible transmission fluid that moves these massive bodies, a force that binds the sun to its planets and the planets to their moons. If a T-39 passes through this microscopic window in space, the mathematics of a future collision become locked, a final click in the mechanism that ensures a later impact. It is a cosmic symphony played on instruments of stone and vacuum, where the timing must be perfect to the millisecond. We watch as the object drifts toward this threshold, realizing that the very laws of motion that gave us a stable home are the same laws that now threaten to unravel it. Within this machine, even the smallest forces contribute to the final tally. We must consider the Yarkovsky effect, a phenomenon where the uneven heating from the sun acts as a microscopic thruster upon the asteroid's surface. Sunlight is not merely warmth. In the vacuum of the void, it is a physical force, a gentle but persistent pressure that nudges the rock. This is the friction within the machine, a subtle deviation that alters the trajectory by mere centimetres over the course of decades. Yet, within the vast scale of the cosmos, a deviation the width of a human hand can, over millions of miles, turn a near miss into a direct hit. The machine follows the physics of heat and rotation with absolute indifference, oblivious to the fact that these microscopic shifts determine the survival of a civilization. If the gears finally mesh and the collision occurs, the release of energy would be staggering. A 300-metre object carries a momentum that defies human intuition. The kinetic energy of such an impact is calculated as 1/2 of the mass multiplied by the square of the velocity. In the silence of space, this formula is a death warrant. The resulting catastrophe would dwarf the Tunguska event of 1908, an explosion that leveled 800 square miles of Siberian forest. On a continental scale, the impact of AT-39 would be a hammer blow to the crust of the world, a collision between two cogs that shatters the delicate balance of the biosphere. It is a primordial violence, the same energy that shaped the moon and scarred the face of Mars, returning to claim its toll. To quantify this risk, we turn to the Palermo Technical Impact Hazard Scale. It is a tool for the brave, a way of moving beyond simple human fear and into the realm of logarithmic data. NASA and other agencies use this scale to calculate probability not through emotion, but through a cold assessment of the void. When the numbers on the Palermo scale rise, they represent a steady, unmoving reality that ignores our prayers and our protests. Human panic is a chaotic, noisy thing, but the numbers are silent. They exist in a space beyond terror, marking the steady progress of an object that is simply following the path of least resistance through the tapestry of space-time. We have not been entirely idle. The legacy of the 2022 Double Asteroid Redirection Test, or DART, stands as our first attempt to jam a rod into the gears of the machine. By crashing a spacecraft into a distant moonlet, we proved that we could act as a small external force against the clockwork. A kinetic impactor is a desperate nudge, a tiny provocation intended to alter the trajectory by the smallest fraction of a degree. But to succeed, we require years of lead time, a decade of preparation to read the machine's manual and find the right place to strike. We have built sentinels in the dark, probes and telescopes that attempt to ignite a spark of hope against the inexorable motion of the abyss. Yet we must confront the hardest truth. The cosmos is indifferent. The universe is not trying to punish humanity, nor is it testing our resolve. It is merely completing a rotation. If our extinction occurs because of an impact in the 21st century or the 22nd, it is a byproduct of motion, not a targeted event. The planets are mindless weights in a blind Titan's mechanism, swinging through the dark with no regard for the life that has blossomed in the cracks. When a star dies or a world is shattered, the abyss does not mourn. It simply continues to expand, a vast and silent ocean where the laws of entropy ensure that every machine must eventually run down. We are but microscopic organisms clinging to a wet rock, yet we are something more. We are the witness. We are the only entity within this cold machine that has learned to understand the mathematics of its own destruction. Our ability to predict the impact of AT-39 is not a sign of our weakness, but a spark of awareness that transcends the mechanical. We are the conscious part of the clockwork that has realized it is being ground down, and in that realization, we find a strange, lonely dignity. We look out into the void and see not just the gears, but the beauty of the movement itself. In the far future, millions of years after AT-39 has either missed our world or left a crater as its only monument, the machine will continue to turn. But even the great engine of the solar system is not eternal. Eventually the sun will swell and die. The planets will drift or be devoured, and the gears will seize up in the final cold embrace of the heat death of the universe. The symphony will end in silence. Yet, there is a melancholic optimism to be found in our current struggle. Though the engine demands our silence and the void offers no comfort, our brief understanding of its rules is our greatest triumph. We inhabit a universe that is vast and silent, but for a brief, flickering moment in the eons of time we spoke its language. We saw the gears, we measured the shadows, and we refused to look away. This refusal to look away brings us to a specific moment in our unfolding history, a moment where the cold mathematics of the abyss manifested as a single, trembling pixel on a screen. The air on the summit of Mauna Kea is thin, brittle, and stripped of the moisture that softens the world below. It is a moonless night in the final month of the year 2039. Here, perched atop the dormant volcanic shield, the atmosphere is so transparent that the stars do not seem to twinkle, so much as pierce the darkness like needles of ice. Within the darkened dome of the Panoramic Survey Telescope and Rapid Response System, the air is kept at a precise temperature to match the freezing night outside, preventing any ripple of heat from distorting the clarity of the celestial view. There is no sound but the low rhythmic hum of cooling fans and the occasional hydraulic groan as the massive instrument tracks the slow rotation of the Earth. Inside the control room, a solitary astronomer sits bathed in the pale blue light of several monitors. She's a tiny figure amidst a landscape of high-performance computing and silent machinery. Her task is repetitive, almost clerical. She's not searching for the birth of galaxies or the haunting glow of nebulae. She's a surveyor of the local void, a bookkeeper for the drifting remnants of the primordial solar system. On her screen, a sequence of 4 images appears, taken minutes apart. To an untrained eye, they are identical fields of static and distant suns. But as the software cycles through them, a single point of light betrays itself. It moves. This point of light is designated AT39. It does not blink. It does not flare with the dramatic fire of a comet. It is a dull, dark fragment of rock, a relic from the dawn of time that has spent the last 4 billion years in the freezing silence between the worlds. For eons, it has followed an elliptical path, a lonely orbit that took it far beyond the reach of human vision. But now, as the astronomer calculates its velocity and vector, the true nature of the solar system begins to reveal itself. We often imagine our planetary neighbourhood as a home, a stable and protective cradle for the miracle of life. We speak of the sun as a life-giver and the planets as our companions in the dark. But this is a fragile illusion born of our short lifespans and our need for meaning. In reality, the solar system is a vast, grinding clockwork of iron and gravity. It is an inexorable mechanism, a series of enormous weights swinging on invisible chains of space-time. It is a machine that was running long before the first cell divided in the primordial oceans, and it will continue to turn long after the last breath of oxygen is extinguished from our atmosphere. In this cold machine, humanity is not the pilot. We are not even the cargo. We are merely accidental passengers, microscopic hitchhikers clinging to the surface of a wet stone that is being tossed through a gallery of giant, mindless gears. The movement of AT39 is not an act of malice. It is not a cosmic judgment or a sign of an impending apocalypse sent by a vengeful deity. It is simply a consequence of the machine's design. The asteroid is following the path of least resistance, obeying the laws of orbital mechanics with a precision that no human instrument can ever truly replicate. It is sliding down the gravitational well of the sun, accelerated by the unseen hands of the gas giants, moving toward a rendezvous that was written into the stars millions of years ago. The astronomer watches the numbers populate on her display. She writes out the coordinates, each digit a confirmation of a terrifying truth. The trajectory of AT39 is no longer a matter of probability. The margin of error begins to collapse. The machine has aligned its gears, and the Earth is now positioned directly in the path of the swinging weight. As she looks out the window at the starlight, the silence of the mountain feels heavier. The telescope continues its work, swinging its massive frame to the next sector of the sky with the same indifference as the rocket just discovered. It is part of our own mechanism, a sentinel we built to watch the darkness, but it offers no comfort. It only provides the data, the cold and unyielding proof that the universe is operating exactly as it should. The asteroid is roughly the size of a cathedral, a jagged mass of silicate and metal that has never known the warmth of a sun until now. As it nears the inner solar system, the sun's radiance begins to ever so slightly heat its surface, but the rock remains a frozen tomb. It carries no message, it has no purpose. It is a fragment of the void, a remnant of the chaos that preceded the order of the planets, and now it is a catalyst for the unravelling of everything we have built. We exist in the gaps between catastrophes. We have flourished during a brief lull in the grinding of the cosmic gears, a short epoch of relative stability that has allowed us to dream of eternity. But the mechanism does not pause for our dreams. Gravity does not yield to our prayers. The iron laws of motion ensure that every object in the cosmos is on a collision course with something else, given enough time. The history of the Earth is a history of impacts, of fire falling from the heavens to reset the clock of evolution. We are simply the first inhabitants of this world to possess the instruments necessary to see the blow coming. The astronomer picks up a telephone, her hand trembling slightly. This is the moment the witness realizes the scale of the abyss, the realization that our entire civilization, with its music, its wars, its cathedrals, and its sprawling cities, is nothing more than a thin film of organic matter on a target. We are a brief flicker of consciousness in a universe that is defined by the silent, eternal movement of dead matter. Outside, the wind picks up, whistling through the struts of the telescope dome. It sounds like the sigh of a great machine, the sound of entropy moving through the tapestry of the night. A T-39 continues its approach, a silent messenger of the void, closing the distance at 20 kilometers every second. It does not need to hurry. The machine is patient. The encounter is already scripted in the mathematics of the cosmos, an inexorable event in the grand symphony of the dark. This is the beginning of the end of our innocence. For the first time, we are forced to see the solar system for what it truly is. Not a garden, but a laboratory of physics where the life and death of entire worlds are merely incidental results of an ongoing experiment. We are looking into the maw of the abyss, and for once, the abyss is looking back through the lens of a telescope on a cold mountain in Hawaii. The countdown has begun, not because a clock was set, but because the gears of the universe have reached their next rotation. The silent approach of December 2039 marks the moment we truly understood our place in the mechanism. We are the observers of our own potential oblivion, the only part of the machine that knows it is about to be struck. The hand that holds the telephone belongs to a species of dreamers, but the eyes that first witnessed the coming storm were not made of flesh and blood. On the high volcanic peak of Haleakala, the automated sensors of the Pan-STARRS facility do not sleep, nor do they wonder. They are the peripheral nervous system of a burgeoning planetary consciousness, a web of glass and silicon designed to scan the velvet dark for anything that dares to move against the backdrop of the eternal stars. These telescopes are not searching for beauty, and they are not seeking a dialogue with the divine. They are diagnostic sensors, monitoring the health of a machine that has been running for 4 billion years. In the month of October, in the year 2023, the machine flagged an irregularity. To understand the nature of this discovery, one must envision the solar system not as a collection of worlds, but as a colossal interlocking gearbox. For eons, the gears have turned with a rhythmic mathematical certainty. The planets trace their paths, the moons follow their masters, and the vast majority of the debris left over from the dawn of time remains trapped in the predictable orbits of the belt between Mars and Jupiter. But the mechanism is not perfect. Entropy is the silent companion of every structure in the cosmos. Over millions of years, the gravitational influence of the gas giants can act like a slow, persistent grinding, nudging a fragment of rock out of its designated track. The discovery in 2023 was the identification of a loose tooth in the cosmic gearbox. The automated survey did not scream. It did not feel a chill of dread. It simply recorded a series of pixels that moved across the frame in a way that defied the established order. The software, a cold and unfeeling logic gate, recognized that this specific point of light was not a star, nor was it one of the known inhabitants of our local neighborhood. It was something new, or rather, something very old that had finally stepped into the light. This was the moment the diagnostic sensor registered a fault. The data was transmitted from the mountaintop to the servers, a silent pulse of information that carried within it the potential for total oblivion. The luminosity of the object was the first variable entered into the equation. In the language of the void, brightness is a proxy for scale and distance. The rock reflected a fraction of the sun's light, a dim glint against the absolute black. By measuring this faint radiance, the astronomers could begin to calculate the mass of the intruder. It was not a mountain, but it was large enough to be a catastrophe. It was a fragment of the primordial chaos, a remnant of the era before the Earth was born, now cast into a trajectory that would bring it into the path of the world. The distance was the second variable. Hundreds of millions of kilometres away, the object was a mere speck, a ghost in the machine. But in the grand symphony of the dark, distance is an illusion that is slowly unravelled by the inexorable march of time. The automated surveys do not see the object as it is, but as a series of vectors in a four-dimensional tapestry. They map the curvature of its flight, projecting its path forward through the centuries. And as the computers in 2023 chewed through the numbers, the results began to converge on a single terrifying truth. The universe does not feel. It does not care that a collection of sentient organisms has built a civilization on the third rock from the sun. The detection of this asteroid was not a warning from a benevolent creator. It was merely the result of a physical system operating according to its own internal laws. The Pan-STARRS facility is a part of that system, a mechanism built by the inhabitants of the Earth to predict the movements of the larger machine. We have reached a stage in our evolution where we can finally hear the grinding of the gears, and we've realised that the gearbox is starting to fail. We often speak of the cosmos as a majestic and harmonious place, a celestial dance of light and gravity. But the discovery of 2023 reveals a different reality. The universe is a ruthless machine, and we are the accidental byproducts of its operation. The asteroid is not an enemy. It is a component of the mechanism that has been jarred loose. It follows the same laws of motion that keep the Earth in its orbit and the Moon in its phase. It is a part of the architecture of the void, as indifferent to our existence as a falling stone is to the grass it crushes. The luminosity, the velocity, the orbital inclination, these are the cold constants of our reality. They are not negotiable. They do not respond to our hopes or our fears. When the telescope first captured that faint trail of light, it was merely solving a problem in celestial mechanics. The machine had identified a collision course. The loose tooth in the gear was moving toward the heart of the works, and there was nothing in the laws of physics to prevent the impact. The history of our species has been defined by our attempts to impose meaning on the silent darkness. We have looked at the stars and seen gods, heroes, and monsters, but through the lens of the automated survey, we see only the cold truth of the abyss. We see a universe of matter in motion, a vast and ancient clockwork that is slowly winding down toward its inevitable heat death. The asteroid discovered in 2023 is a reminder that we are not the masters of this machine. We are merely the observers of its decay. As the data from the discovery began to spread through the scientific community, a profound silence took hold. It was the silence of a witness who has looked into the maw of the abyss and understood, for the first time, the scale of the threat. The sentinel on the mountain had done its job. It had provided the evidence. It had pointed its robotic finger at the approaching shadow. But the sentinel cannot save us. It can only tell us the time of our departure. The discovery was a diagnostic triumph and an existential catastrophe. It marked the moment we transitioned from a state of blissful ignorance to a state of enlightened despair. We now know the coordinates of our potential oblivion. We have seen the loose tooth in the gearbox, and we have calculated the exact second when it will jam the works. The machine continues to turn, the gears continue to grind, and the asteroid continues its silent approach through the void. The universe remains indifferent, a vast and eternal mechanism that will continue to function long after the last observer has been extinguished. In the cold equation of the cosmos, the detection of our own end is just another data point, a flicker of light in the dark that signifies nothing more than the inexorable movement of matter. As we approach the late months of the year 2039, the cosmic clockwork reaches a point of profound and terrifying tension. To understand the peril we face, one must look beyond the visual spectacle of a falling star and peer into the invisible architecture of the heavens. The universe does not operate on whim or malice. It functions through the cold, rigid application of geometry. In the vast reaches of the void, where the silence is absolute and the cold is eternal, the movement of every celestial body is governed by the curvature of space itself. We find ourselves standing at the precipice of a specific temporal junction, a moment where the path of our world and the path of the intruder are destined to intersect in a graveyard of gravity. In the language of the machine, this intersection is known as a gravitational keyhole. It is a precise notch in the massive gear of the Earth's orbit, an invisible window hanging in the blackness of the abyss. This keyhole is not a physical object, but a consequence of the complex interplay of mass and motion. Imagine the solar system as a gargantuan engine, where the planets are the heavy flywheels and gravity is the invisible transmission fluid that moves these massive bodies. This fluid does not merely hold things in place, it flows and surges, creating currents and eddies in the fabric of the cosmos. As the asteroid approaches the Earth in the year 2039, it will be caught in these invisible currents. The gravity of our world will reach out like a phantom hand, grasping the passing stone and tugging at its trajectory. The geometry of this encounter is a masterpiece of precision and horror. If the asteroid passes through that microscopic window in space, a window measuring only a few hundred meters across, its fate and ours will be welded together. This is the orbital resonance, a rhythmic synchronization where the asteroid's journey around the Sun becomes perfectly timed with the movement of the Earth. It is a symphony of catastrophe where every note is played with mathematical certainty. Passing through the keyhole does not cause an immediate impact, but it performs a far more insidious function. It alters the asteroid's velocity by an exact amount, ensuring that when it completes its next circuit of the Sun, the Earth will be waiting at the precise coordinate of its return. In this moment, the mathematics of collision become locked. The keyhole is the trigger in the mechanism of our oblivion. Once the asteroid enters that narrow gate, the laws of physics cease to be a matter of study and become an executioner's blade. There is no force in our current understanding that can unravel the knot once it is tied. The asteroid, a silent sentinel of the primordial era, will have been guided by the inexorable pull of our own home into a corridor of certain destruction. We are the architects of our own gravity, and in the late months of 2039, that gravity may become the very tool that ensures our erasure from the tapestry of the living. We often imagine that we have agency in this vast cosmos, that our intelligence and our will can transcend the movement of the spheres. But the resonance of 2039 reveals the truth of the ruthless machine. We are spectators to a calculation that was set in motion eons ago. The asteroid is merely following the path of least resistance, sliding through the grooves of space-time like a needle on a record. If it hits the notch, the music changes. The melody of human history, with all its triumphs and agonies, will be drowned out by the discordant roar of an impact that was preordained by the position of the stars. The scale of this geometry is almost impossible for the human mind to grasp. We live in a world of meters and kilometers, of hours and days. But the keyhole exists on a scale that defies our intuition. To hit a target so small while moving at tens of thousands of kilometers per hour is a feat of cosmic marksmanship that seems like a cruel joke of the gods. Yet, the universe is a vast and patient calculator. It does not miss. If the variables are aligned, the result is inevitable. The void does not offer second chances or margins of error. It offers only the cold reality of the equation. As we look toward that pivotal epoch, we must recognize that the Earth is not a fortress. It is a fragile vessel moving through a shooting gallery of ancient remnants. The gravity that gives us life, that holds our atmosphere to our skin and keeps us tethered to the ground, is the same force that acts as the transmission fluid for our potential ruin. It is the very mechanism that will draw the predator into the heart of the village. The Symphony of the Spheres is not a song composed for our benefit. It is the sound of a machine that has been grinding for billions of years, indifferent to the sparks that fly when its gears occasionally jam. In the silence of the laboratories and the quiet halls of the observatories, the scientists watch the data points flicker. They see the approaching shadow, and they calculate the width of the keyhole to the decimal. They are the witnesses to the unravelling. They see the gear teeth moving toward the notch. There is a profound melancholy in this knowledge, to see the catastrophe approaching, and to understand exactly why it cannot be turned aside by hope alone. We are learning the grammar of the abyss, and we are finding that it is written in the language of an inexorable geometry. The year 2039 will not be a year of fire, but a year of mathematics. It will be the moment we learn if the lock has been turned. If the asteroid slides through that narrow aperture, the countdown to our departure begins in earnest. The resonance will be established, the gears will be engaged, and the countdown to the final impact will be etched into the very fabric of our orbit. We will continue to turn, the sun will continue to rise, and the seasons will continue to change. But we will be living in the shadow of a locked equation. We will be the inhabitants of a world that has already been weighed and measured by the cold hand of the cosmos, and found to be in the path of the machine. This is the beauty and the terror of the universe we inhabit. It is a place of absolute order and absolute indifference. The geometry of the keyhole is a reminder that we are part of a larger system, a primordial mechanism that does not recognize our borders, our cultures, or our names. It recognizes only mass, velocity, and the curvature of the void. As the asteroid nears its first encounter, we are forced to confront the reality that our existence is a flicker of light in a vast and darkening room. The machine continues its inexorable work. The transmission fluid of gravity continues to flow, and we wait to see if the notch in the gear will catch, bringing the symphony of our species to a silent and eternal end. Yet even as we gaze into the abyss and attempt to map the trajectories of our own potential oblivion, we find that the clockwork of the cosmos is far more intricate than the simple tug of gravity. There is a ghost in the machine, a subtle and silent hand that pushes against the cold stone of the wandering remnants. It is not the violent collision of worlds or the sudden flare of a supernova, but a microscopic friction that arises from the very light that sustains our existence. We often think of sunlight as a warm embrace, a gentle radiance that fuels the green life of our valleys and the blue clarity of our oceans. But in the vacuum of the void, sunlight is a physical force, a relentless bombardment of particles that acts as a hammer upon the anvil of the deep. This phenomenon, first observed in the dying years of the 19th century and the early dawn of the 20th, reveals that the sun is not merely a lamp in the darkness, but a microscopic thruster. When the light of our star strikes the surface of a lonely asteroid, it does not simply illuminate the dust and the ancient ice, it imparts momentum. Each photon is a tiny messenger of energy, and as millions of these messengers strike the dark face of the rock, they exert a pressure so minute it defies human perception. But the machine of the universe is a patient one, and it operates across scales of time and space that render the infinitesimal into the monumental. The asteroid is not a static object. It is a sentinel that turns upon its own axis as it drifts through the silence. As one side faces the sun, it absorbs the heat of the primordial furnace, storing that energy within its rocky skin. But as the asteroid rotates, the side that was once bathed in light turns toward the eternal shadow of the deep. It is in this transition from day to night that the mechanism reveals its hidden teeth. The heat that was absorbed must be released back into the void. This re-radiation of energy, the cooling of the rock in the afternoon of its lonely day, acts as a jet of invisible steam. It is a thermal emission that pushes back against the vacuum. Because the asteroid is turning, this heat is not released toward the sun, but at a slight angle, trailing behind the rotation like the wake of a ghost ship. This is the Yarkovsky effect, a thermal thruster born of the struggle between light and shadow. It is a microscopic nudge, a force so weak that it could not move a single grain of sand on the surface of our world. Yet, for a mountain of iron and silicate drifting through the frictionless abyss, it is an inexorable engine. Over the course of a single day, the asteroid may be pushed by the width of a single hair. Over a year, the deviation might be no more than the length of a human finger. But the machine of the universe does not count in years. It counts in eons and epochs. Over decades and centuries, these centimeters accumulate, compounding with the ruthless logic of a cosmic ledger. Consider the terrifying precision of this hidden gear. A deviation the width of a human hand, occurring over the span of 10 years, can be the difference between a near miss and a direct impact. In the silence of the celestial shooting gallery, the sun is constantly nudging the predators. It is sculpting their paths, subtly altering the geometry of the keyhole we so desperately watch. The thermal thrusters are the unseen hands that turn the dial of our destiny. If the asteroid rotates in one direction, the thermal push accelerates it, driving it outward into a wider, more distant orbit. If it rotates in the opposite direction, the push acts as a brake, causing the rock to spiral inward toward the warmth of the sun and the vulnerability of the inner worlds. We are living in a world where our survival depends on the rate at which a distant rock cools in the dark. This is the scale paradox that defines our existence. The most massive catastrophe imaginable, the unravelling of a civilization and the ignition of the atmosphere, can be traced back to the way a few photons were absorbed by a patch of regolith millions of miles away. The universe does not require a grand architect to decide our fate. It requires only the physics of heat and the indifference of rotation. The machine follows these laws with a cold and silent majesty. It does not care if the thermal push sends the asteroid into the empty void or into the heart of a populated continent. It only cares that the equation is balanced. As we look toward the year 2036 and the subsequent return of the shadow in 2068, the scientists in their quiet halls must account for this microscopic friction. They must measure the rate of rotation, the colour of the rock, and the way it holds its heat. They are trying to read the mind of the machine by observing the smallest of its movements. There is a profound sense of fragility in this realization. We are tethered to a planet that is itself a passenger in this thermal symphony, and our future is being written in the margins of a ledger we have only just begun to understand. The abyss is not empty. It is filled with the pressure of light and the resonance of heat. Every stone in the asteroid belt is a silent engine, breathing in the sun and breathing out the cold radiation of the deep. This is the tapestry of the cosmos, a web of forces both immense and invisible. The gravity of the giants provides the structure, the architecture of the orbits, but the light of the sun provides the texture, the subtle shifts that determine whether the gear teeth will mesh or bypass one another. We are the witnesses to this process, the conscious observers of a mechanism that has no consciousness of its own. In this context, the asteroid is no longer just a falling rock. It is a manifestation of the ruthless machine. It is a projectile being guided by the very light that gives us life. The sun, which we worship as the progenitor of our species, is the same force that provides the fuel for the celestial thrusters that may one day bring our journey to an end. This is the melancholic optimism of the cosmic perspective, to understand that we are part of a system so grand and so precise that even the smallest heat signature matters. We are not separate from the void. We are subject to its every whim, its every microscopic friction, and its every silent law. As the asteroid continues its long journey toward its appointment with the Earth, the sun will continue to beat upon its surface. The thermal engines will continue to fire invisible and relentless. The centimetres will continue to pile up one by one, decade after decade, until they become the kilometres that define our salvation or our ruin. The machine does not hurry, and it does not hesitate. It simply grinds on, the gears of light and shadow turning in the dark, indifferent to the sparks of consciousness that watch from the blue marble below, waiting to see if the hand of the sun will push the shadow away, or draw it into a final, eternal embrace. When the invisible hands of the sun and the subtle friction of the light have finished their work, the abstract calculations of the mathematicians transition into the brutal reality of the physical world. The asteroid is no longer a ghost in the telescope or a probability in a ledger. It becomes a concentrated vessel of potential oblivion. To understand what happens when such a sentinel of the void reaches the end of its journey, we must look into the heart of the ruthless machine and examine the calculus of the impact. The catastrophe is not born of malice, but of a simple, inexorable law of motion that governs every grain of sand and every burning star in the cosmos. Consider an object 300 meters in diameter. In the scale of the solar system, it is a mere speck of dust, a fragment of primordial debris left over from the chaotic birth of our planetary neighbourhood. But in the scale of our fragile existence, it is a mountain falling from the sky. This 300-metre monolith carries within it a terrifying quantity of kinetic energy, a force that has been accumulating over eons of silent travel through the abyss. This energy is the currency of the universe, and when the asteroid meets the Earth, the debt must be paid in full, with the planet itself acting as the ledger. The physics of this moment are governed by a formula of haunting simplicity, a mathematical decree that dictates the magnitude of the coming ruin. To find the energy release of such a collision, the machine requires only two variables. The kinetic energy is defined as 1/2 of the mass multiplied by the square of the velocity. There is a silent, lethal elegance in this arrangement. While the mass of the rock, the 300 meters of iron and stone, is immense, it is the velocity that truly empowers the catastrophe. Because the velocity is squared, every increment of speed adds a disproportionate weight to the blow. If the speed of the asteroid doubles, the energy of the impact does not merely double, it quadruples. This is the ruthless logic of the square, a mathematical lever that elevates a simple collision into an event of planetary significance. As the asteroid enters the atmosphere, it is moving at tens of thousands of kilometers per hour. At these speeds, the air does not behave like a gas, it behaves like a solid wall. The 300-meter object, this remnant of the ancient world, compresses the atmosphere before it, creating a cushion of plasma that burns with a light brighter than 1,000 suns. The energy, calculated as 1/2 of the mass multiplied by the square of the velocity, begins to convert from the energy of motion into the energy of heat and pressure. This is the moment where the gears of the cosmos finally mesh with the gears of our world. Imagine the Earth and the asteroid as two colossal cogs in a primordial machine. For billions of years, these cogs have turned in the dark, their paths occasionally crossing but their teeth never touching. But now, the timing is perfect. The alignment is precise. As the asteroid descends, it is like a rogue gear being forced into a clockwork mechanism that was never designed to receive it. The geometry of the impact is not a smooth blending of motion, but a violent shearing of the fabric of the environment. The teeth of the gears do not fit, they shatter. They grind against one another with a force that vaporizes rock and liquefies the crust. The machine does not stop, it simply consumes the smaller gear, absorbing its energy and redistributing it across the face of the globe. To find a comparison for such a moment, we look back to the year 1908, to a remote region in Siberia known as Tunguska. On that June morning, a smaller visitor from the void exploded in the atmosphere, flattening 80 million trees over an area of 2,000 square kilometers. The shockwave was felt across continents, and the night skies of Europe were illuminated for days by the dust of a disintegrated world. Yet, the object at Tunguska was perhaps only 60 meters across. The object we now contemplate is 300 meters. Because of the law where energy is 1/2 of the mass multiplied by the square of the velocity, the increase in size is not linear. It is catastrophic. An impact of this scale would not be a localized tragedy. It would be a continental event, a fundamental resetting of the biological and geological clock. While Tunguska leveled a forest, a 300-meter impact would level a civilization. The energy release would be equivalent to hundreds, perhaps thousands, of the most powerful nuclear devices ever conceived by the human mind. Yet it would come without the lingering poison of radiation. It would be a clean, cold destruction, delivered by the mechanical indifference of the cosmos. The shockwave would circle the planet, a ripple in the tapestry of the atmosphere that would be felt by every living thing. The dust thrown into the sky would act as a shroud, a veil of grey that would block out the sun and turn the day into a long eternal twilight. This is the scale paradox of our existence. We live our lives in the margins of these immense forces, unaware that the calculus of our destruction is already written in the motion of the stars. The 300-meter rock is a messenger from the primordial past, carrying the energy of the early solar system into the heart of the modern world. It is a reminder that we are not the masters of the machine. We are merely the passengers. The vacuum of the void is not empty. It is filled with these potential velocities, these masses waiting for their square to be calculated by the unfeeling hand of physics. In the face of such a prospect, there is a profound sense of the sublime. To understand the formula is to understand the language of the Creator, a language that speaks in terms of mass and motion rather than mercy or intent. The universe does not hate us, but it does not love us either. It only obeys the equation. The 1/2 of the mass and the square of the velocity are the only truths that matter in the moment of contact. Everything else, our history, our art, our dreams, is merely the friction that is vaporized in the heat of the exchange. As we look up at the silent stars, we are looking at a field of potential impacts, a vast gallery of cogs turning in the dark. Each one is a mathematical certainty waiting for its moment to mesh with the Earth. We are the witnesses to this grand, terrifying symphony, the only part of the machine that has developed the ability to see the gears and understand the weight of the blow. This is our burden and our wonder, to know that we live in a universe of such vast and lethal precision, where the simple square of a velocity can unravel the work of eons in a single, blinding heartbeat of light and fire. The machine turns, the gears align, and we wait in the shadow of the 300-meter sentinel, watching the sky for the moment the calculus of the impact becomes the history of our world. But human emotion is a poor instrument for measuring the infinite. Where we feel terror, the universe only feels the weight of its own momentum. To the sentient mind, the prospect of a 300-meter rock descending from the heavens is a nightmare of fire and shadow, but to the cosmos, it is merely a minor correction in the distribution of matter. To bridge this gap between our fragile perception and the cold reality of the void, we have constructed a new language. We have sought to turn our fear into a value, to translate the vast and lethal choreography of the solar system into a series of silent, unmoving numbers. This is the birth of the Palermo Technical Impact Hazard Scale, the ledger of our potential oblivion. Before this mechanism existed, we struggled to articulate the gravity of the threat. We spoke in generalities and vague approximations of doom. But the universe does not operate on generalities. It operates on the inexorable precision of physics. In the year 2002, a group of researchers sought to refine our understanding of the abyss. They realized that a simple scale of 1 to 10 was insufficient to capture the true nature of cosmic risk. They needed something that could account for the vast spans of time and the varying degrees of probability that define our existence in the gallery of the stars. They created a logarithmic scale, a mathematical ladder where each step represents a tenfold increase in the weight of the catastrophe. The Palermo scale is not a tool for the faint of heart. It is a cold assessment of the void, a way for the human mind to stare into the abyss without blinking. It does not care about the beauty of our cities or the depth of our sorrows. It only cares about the background frequency of impact and the specific probability of a single event. It compares the risk of a specific asteroid to the constant white noise of the cosmos, the steady rain of dust and stone that has fallen upon the Earth for billions of years. To have a Palermo value of 0 is to say that the risk is exactly equal to the background hazard of the universe. To have a positive value is to indicate a threat that rises above the primordial static, a signal of impending disaster that demands our attention. In the sterile, quiet rooms where the National Aeronautics and Space Administration tracks the movement of the Sentinels, there is no room for the screaming pulse of the survival instinct. There are only the screens, the data points, and the logarithmic values. When a new object is discovered, it is not met with panic, but with the systematic application of the formula. The scientists look at the mass, the velocity, and the passage of years until the potential impact. They calculate the likelihood that this specific gear in the machine will mesh with our own. This is the quantification of the threat, the process of stripping away the layers of human drama to reveal the skeletal truth of our vulnerability. We often find comfort in numbers, believing that by naming the monster, we can somehow tame it. We think that by assigning a value of -2 or -5 to a potential impact, we have pushed the darkness back. But the Palermo scale does not offer safety, it only offers clarity. It tells us that the probability is low, but never zero. It reminds us that we are living in a statistical margin, a brief moment of calm between the turning of the great cosmic wheels. The logarithmic nature of the scale is a testament to the scale paradox of our lives. A small change in the decimal point represents a vast difference in the energy that could be unleashed upon our world. A difference that could mean the survival of a city or the unravelling of an entire epoch. The scale is a reflection of the ruthless machine. It treats the destruction of a civilization with the same mathematical indifference as the passing of a comet. It is a tool designed for a species that has learned to see the gears and understand the weight of the blow, yet remains powerless to stop the machine from turning. Contrast this with the way we experience fear. Our ancestors looked at the sky and saw the wrath of gods or the omens of kings. They felt the terror of the unknown in their very marrow. Today we have replaced that primal dread with the steady, unmoving data of the Palermo scale. We have exchanged the gods for logarithms. Yet, there is a certain melancholy in this transition. By quantifying the threat, we have made it a part of our architecture. It is no longer a sudden, inexplicable disaster. It is a known variable in the equation of our existence. We live our lives knowing that the number is being constantly recalculated, that every night the telescopes are feeding new data into the mechanism, shifting the values ever so slightly. We are the first generation of humans to know the precise probability of our own extinction. We are the witnesses to the math. This is the existential pivot of the modern age. We look out at the vast, silent gallery of the cosmos, and we do not see a vacuum of nothingness. We see a field of potential impacts, each one waiting for its moment to be quantified. The Palermo scale is the map of this field, a guide to the minefield of the solar system. It is the language we use to speak to the void, a way of asserting our presence in a universe that does not recognize our name. We take the chaos of the primordial past and the uncertainty of the future, and we compress them into a single, elegant value. But the numbers themselves are silent. They do not warn us with a shout. They wait in the dark, etched into the memory of our machines. A value of -4 on the scale may seem insignificant, a mere whisper in the symphony of the stars. But that whisper carries the weight of millions of tons of rock and the kinetic energy of 1,000 suns. It is a reminder that the silence of the void is not the silence of peace, but the silence of potential. The Palermo scale is our way of listening to that silence, of deciphering the hidden rhythms of the machine before they manifest as fire in our atmosphere. As we continue to scan the horizon of the eternal twilight, we must confront the reality that the numbers are not on our side. The universe is old, and it is patient. It has all the time in the world to wait for the probability to catch up with the reality. We are the ones who are in a hurry. We are the ones who measure our lives in decades while the cosmos measures its movements in eons. The scale reflects this disparity. It accounts for the time remaining until the potential impact, acknowledging that a threat 100 years away is different from a threat that will arrive tomorrow. But in the grand tapestry of the cosmos, 100 years is but a single, fleeting heartbeat. The Palermo Technical Impact Hazard Scale is more than just a scientific instrument. It is a monument to our desire to understand the inexorable forces that govern our fate. It is our attempt to transcend our biological limitations and see the universe for what it truly is, a vast, unfeeling mechanism of mass and motion. We are the observers who have stepped back from the canvas to see the patterns in the brushstrokes of destruction. We have found a way to measure the abyss, to put a value on the void, and to quantify the very thing that could devour us. In the end, the scale is a testament to the wonder of the human mind. In a universe of such lethal precision, we have developed the ability to calculate the weight of the hammer before it falls. We have turned our panic into a cold, steady assessment of the risk. We live in the shadow of the 300-meter sentinel, but we do not live in ignorance. We know the math. We understand the calculus. and as we watch the numbers flicker on the screens in the quiet of the night, we are reminded of our place in the symphony. We are the ones who see the gears. We are the ones who count the seconds. We are the ones who wait for the moment when the data becomes the event, and the history of the world is rewritten in the light of an ancient falling star. But calculation is merely the prelude to intervention. To know the weight of the hammer is one thing. To reach out and catch the handle as it falls is another entirely. For eons we were the silent witnesses to the celestial mechanism, watching as the vast and indifferent clockwork of the cosmos ground everything in its path to dust. We observed the craters on the moon and the scars on our own world as evidence of a power we could never hope to challenge. We were the passengers on a vessel with no rudder, drifting through a void filled with the remnants of ancient catastrophes. But in the late summer of 2022, the human story underwent a fundamental shift. We decided that we were no longer content to simply count the seconds until our own oblivion. We decided to jam a rod into the gears of the machine. On the 26th of September 2022, a small sentinel of human ingenuity hurtled through the abyss at over 6 kilometers per second. This was the Double Asteroid Redirection Test, a mission born of the realization that knowledge without agency is merely a slow descent into despair. The target was a moonlet named Dimorphos, a jagged fragment of primordial rock orbiting a larger companion in the silent dark, 11 million kilometers from the warmth of our fires. To the universe, Dimorphos was an insignificant pebble in a desert of trillions. To us, it was the first test of our ability to speak the language of the machine and change the sentence it had written. The kinetic impactor is perhaps the most elegant and brutal expression of our desire to survive. It does not rely on complex chemistry or the fury of nuclear fire to achieve its goal. Instead, it utilizes the cold, inexorable laws of physics that have governed the cosmos since the dawn of time. It is a simple exchange of momentum, a nudge delivered with the precision of a surgeon and the force of a falling mountain. By slamming a spacecraft into a celestial body, we're not attempting to destroy it. We're attempting to edit its future. We're reaching across the vacuum to provide a microscopic correction to a trajectory that has been set for billions of years. It is a whisper meant to deflect a roar. To understand the scale of this defiance, one must imagine the solar system as a great intricate clock where every gear is a planet or an asteroid, linked by the invisible chains of gravity. For ages, these gears have turned in perfect, lethal harmony. An asteroid on a collision course with Earth is simply a gear performing its assigned function. When we launched our craft toward Dimorphos, we were attempting to do the impossible. We were trying to change the timing of the clock. By striking the moonlet, we transferred the kinetic energy of our machine into the mass of the rock, shortening its orbital period by 32 minutes. It was a deviation of less than 1%, a change so small it would be invisible to anything but the most sensitive instruments, and yet in the grand tapestry of the cosmos it was a revolution. This is the physics of the nudge. In the vastness of space, time is the greatest lever we possess. If we were to wait until a threat was at our doorstep, all the fire in our reach would be useless against the momentum of the abyss. But if we can reach out years, or even decades, before the moment of impact, the smallest fraction of a degree can be the difference between a catastrophic collision and a silent near miss. We need that lead time. We need to see the gears moving long before they mesh. The kinetic impactor is our way of asserting that we have read the manual of the machine and found a way to alter its output. We're no longer just the debris in the mechanism, we're becoming the engineers of our own safety. As the spacecraft drew closer to its target, its cameras sent back images of a world never before seen by human eyes. Dimorphos appeared as a pile of rubble, a collection of boulders held together by the weakest of gravitational bonds, a remnant of a more violent epoch. It was a lonely, silent sentinel of the primordial past floating in the eternal twilight. In those final seconds, the distance between the observer and the observed vanished. The machine we had built became a part of the asteroid it sought to move. The impact was not just a collision of metal and stone. It was the moment our species truly reached out to touch the face of the inexorable. We did not just watch the light. we chose to ignite a spark of our own. The success of this mission left a legacy that transcends the technical data gathered by our telescopes. It proved that the universe is not a closed system, and that our fate is not entirely written in the stars. We have demonstrated that we can intervene in the celestial symphony, adding our own notes to the score. The machine is vast, and it is unfeeling, but it is not invulnerable to the influence of a conscious mind. We have found the handle to the hammer. We have learned that by understanding the mechanism of our own destruction, we can begin to dismantle the inevitability of the catastrophe. Yet, this triumph is tempered by a profound sense of melancholic optimism. We have moved a pebble in an ocean of boulders. We have learned to jam the gears of a single small moonlet, while the rest of the great machine continues to turn, indifferent to our presence. The void remains vast, and the number of threats hidden in the dark is still beyond our total comprehension. Our victory was a proof of concept, a signal sent into the silence that we are here, and we are fighting to stay. It is a reminder that while we may be small, our reach is expanding. We are the witnesses who have decided to become participants. In the wake of the impact, as the dust settled and the new orbit of Dimorphos was confirmed, the human perspective shifted once more. We looked out at the stars not just with fear or wonder, but with a new sense of responsibility. We are the only part of the machine that knows it is a machine. We are the only gears that can choose to stop turning. The DART legacy is not just about the physics of impactors or the calculations of orbital mechanics. It is about the transition from a species that survives by luck to a species that survives by intent. We are learning to navigate the clockwork, to find the gaps between the teeth of the gears, and to ensure that the tapestry of human history is not unravelled by a stray rock from the primordial dark. We continue to stand on our small blue platform, looking out into the abyss. We see the sentinels of stone and ice that haunt the periphery of our vision. But now, we look at them with the knowledge that we have a rod to jam into the gears. We have a way to speak back to the silence. The universe may be a ruthless machine, and entropy may be its final law, but for a brief moment in the eons of time, we have found a way to pause the ticking. We have reached out into the void, and for the first time in the history of the world moved because we willed it so. We are the ones who see the gears, and now we are the ones who have begun to change the way they turn. But we must be careful not to mistake our agency for a shift in the fundamental indifference of the great machine. While we celebrate the moment our will manifested in the movement of a celestial body, the cosmos remains a blind titan, stumbling through the dark without purpose or perception. To the universe, our greatest triumphs and our most harrowing tragedies are indistinguishable from the silent drifting of dust. The gears of the heavens do not grind with a sense of justice, nor do they turn with the intent to provide a home for consciousness. They simply turn. We are passengers on a grain of sand caught in the teeth of a mechanism so vast that its scale defies the limits of our imagination, and its silence is the only answer to our most profound questions. We often project our own emotions onto the void, imagining a heaven that watches over us or a hell that waits to claim us. We speak of the wrath of the sun or the protective embrace of the giant planets, yet these are but fictions we weave to make the abyss feel more like a home. The reality is far more chilling and far more majestic. The planets are not sentinels or gods, they are mindless weights, captive to the inexorable pull of gravity. Jupiter does not consciously shield the inner world from the bombardment of the primordial dark. It is merely a massive gravity well, a pit in the fabric of space that happens to catch the stray remnants of the solar system's creation. If a wandering rock were to find its way past that giant and strike our world, it would not be an act of malice. It would be a byproduct of motion, a momentary intersection of two paths in the dark. The universe is not trying to punish us. It is merely completing a rotation. This is the ruthlessness of the cosmic machine. It operates on the principle of entropy, a slow and steady unravelling of all order and all heat. The stars do not ignite to provide light for our eyes. They burn because the laws of physics demand that compressed hydrogen must fuse and scream into the vacuum. They will eventually exhaust their fuel and collapse into white dwarfs, or explode into supernovas, devouring their children in a final unthinking spasm of energy. When our own sun reaches the end of its long epoch, it will not pause to consider the billions of years of history it is about to erase. It will expand and consume the Earth with the same cold indifference with which it currently warms our skin. The tapestry of human achievement, the songs we have sung and the wars we have fought will be reduced to their constituent atoms, scattered into the silent abyss as if they had never been. We exist in a brief window of stability, a narrow gap between the teeth of the gears. For thousands of years we have enjoyed a climate that allowed us to flourish, a planetary shield that held, and a sun that remained steady. But this stability is not a promise. It is a statistical fluke in a system that is constantly moving toward chaos. The blind titan does not care if we thrive or if we vanish into oblivion. If our species were to be extinguished tomorrow by a solar flare or a drifting comet, the stars would continue to shine with the same cold brilliance. The galaxies would continue their outward flight, and the great clock of the cosmos would not skip a single second. Our extinction would not be a catastrophic failure of the system, it would be a natural outcome of its operation. There is a profound loneliness in this realization. To look out into the abyss and see not a face, but a mirror of our own insignificance, is to confront the true scale of the void. We are a biological anomaly, a brief flicker of awareness in a universe that is otherwise dead and unseeing. The mechanism of the cosmos is ancient, dating back 13,800,000,000 years, and it will continue for trillions more after the last human breath is drawn. We are but a microscopic occurrence in a single corner of one galaxy, among hundreds of billions of others. The scale paradox tells us that while we feel our lives are of infinite importance, to the macrocosm we are less than the shadow of a shadow. Yet, it is within this very indifference that we find the source of our greatest dignity. Because the universe does not care, our caring becomes the only thing that matters. Because the void is silent, our voices are the only sound of meaning. We are the only part of the machine that has developed the capacity to feel the cold and the wonder of the dark. We are the ones who give the eons their names and the stars their stories. The blind titan may move with an inexorable force, but it does not know where it is going. We, however, can see the path. We can observe the mechanism, calculate the weight of the planets, and understand the laws that govern the decay of matter. We are the witnesses who have emerged from the mud of a small world to look the abyss in the eye and refuse to be cowed by its vastness. Our survival is not a right granted by the heavens. It is a task we must perform for ourselves. We must navigate the clockwork with precision, finding the gaps where we can build a future that the universe never intended for us. We have learned to ignite our own lights in the darkness, and to build our own sentinels to watch the horizon. We are the only gears in the machine that can choose to change our frequency. While the rest of the cosmos follows the path of least resistance toward the ultimate heat death and the silence of the eternal void, we are the ones who struggle against the current. We are the ones who insist on order in a landscape of increasing entropy. As we look toward the future, we must carry this understanding with us. The universe is a cold machine, but it is also a stage upon which we can play out a drama of our own making. We are the ones who define the value of our existence. If we are to transcend our primordial origins and survive the eventual catastrophe of our sun's death, it will not be because the universe spared us. It will be because we used our understanding of the mechanism to escape its grasp. We are the orphans of the cosmos, abandoned by a creator that never existed, left to wander a vast and unfeeling house. But in that abandonment, we have found our freedom. We are not bound by a divine plan. We are limited only by our own imagination and our ability to manipulate the forces of the abyss. The blind titan continues its march, unheeding and eternal. The planets continue their mindless orbits, and the stars continue to burn through their fuel in the silent dark. But on this one small world, The lights are on. We're awake, and we are watching the gears turn. We know that the void is waiting to reclaim us, but until that day comes, we will continue to speak into the silence. We will continue to build, to learn, and to reach out into the primordial dark. We are the conscious heart of a cold machine, and for as long as we endure, the universe is no longer entirely blind. It sees itself through our eyes, and in that brief, flickering moment of awareness, the abyss is no longer just a void. It is a home for as long as we can keep the gears from crushing us. To understand our place in this vast, unfeeling mechanism, we must first look down at the ground beneath our feet. For hundreds of millions of years, this world was nothing more than a silent, damp stone hurtling through a radiation-choked vacuum. We are, in the most literal sense, microscopic organisms clinging to the thin, fragile crust of a wet rock. We are a biological film, a brief and shimmering dew that has formed on the surface of a cooling cinder. To the cosmos, our existence is a rounding error, a fleeting chemical anomaly that occurs in the quiet corners of an ordinary galaxy. The universe does not breathe. It does not feel the warmth of the suns it ignites, nor does it mourn the cold death of the worlds it devours. It is an inexorable machine of gravity and entropy, a clockwork of such staggering proportions that our entire history occupies less than a single tick of its celestial gears. Yet, within this crushing scale, something impossible has occurred. The machine has begun to look at itself. We are the witnesses, the only entities within this primordial dark that have learned to decipher the math of our own destruction. For eons, the stars burned in a lonely silence, their light travelling across the abyss with no eye to catch it, and no mind to weigh its significance. But now, through the improbable assembly of carbon and water, the universe has developed a nervous system. We are the sensory organs of the cosmos, the flicker of consciousness that allows the void to finally perceive its own vastness. This is the great paradox of our existence. We are small enough to be extinguished by a single stray asteroid, yet we are large enough to contain the laws of physics within our thoughts. Consider the sheer audacity of our position. We stand upon a planet that is one among 8, orbiting a star that is one among 400 billion, in a galaxy that is one among 2 trillion. We are surrounded by an ocean of oblivion, separated from the killing cold by a veil of gas no thicker than the skin of an apple. We are soft, liquid-based creatures living in a universe of fire and stone. And yet we have dared to look up. We have used our brief moment in the light to build instruments that can peer back into the first seconds of time, seeing the glow of the beginning and calculating the distance to the end. We have mapped the tapestry of the cosmic web, tracing the invisible threads of dark matter that hold the clusters of galaxies together like dew on a spider's web. This ability to predict the impact, to see the coming catastrophe, is often mistaken for a sign of our insignificance. We calculate the trajectory of the sun toward its eventual expansion into a red giant, and we feel the weight of our own futility. We watch the decay of the isotopes and the cooling of the cosmic microwave background, and we see the inevitable heat death of all things. But this knowledge is not a weakness, it is the ultimate spark of awareness. To be part of the clockwork and to realise that you are being ground down by the gears is the highest form of tragedy, but it is also the highest form of dignity. The gears do not know they are turning, the stars do not know they are dying. Only the witness can feel the chill of the coming winter and still choose to appreciate the fading warmth of the hearth. We have moved beyond the simple struggle for survival that defines the primordial mud. We have begun to transcend our biological imperatives. While the rest of the animal kingdom remains locked in a cycle of consumption and reproduction, we have diverted our energy toward the understanding of the mechanism. We have taken the raw materials of the Earth and shaped them into sentinels that sit on the edge of the solar system, sending back whispers of data from the silent dark. We have learned to read the light of stars that died 5 billion years ago, turning the sky into a library of ancient ghosts. We are the only part of the tapestry that has reached out to touch the hand of the weaver, only to find that there is no weaver, only the beautiful, terrifying symmetry of the laws themselves. This realization brings with it a profound sense of melancholic optimism. We're alone, but we're awake. We are fragile, but we are the architects of meaning. In the vast, silent symphony of the cosmos, our voices are the only notes that understand the music. The universe is a grand, elaborate structure of cause and effect, a sequence of events that began with a burst of heat and will end in a whisper of cold. It is a story written in the language of mathematics, a script of energy and matter that follows an inexorable path toward equilibrium. But we are the ones who read the script. We are the ones who give the epochs their names and find the beauty in the ruins of dead suns. We inhabit the interface between the infinitesimal and the infinite. To the atoms that compose us, we are a vast and stable universe. To the galaxies that surround us, we are less than a spark. We live in the tension of the scale paradox, existing as the bridge between the quantum foam and the cosmic horizon. It is here, in this thin slice of reality, that we have built our civilizations and dreamt our dreams. We have turned the cold, hard logic of the machine into a home. We have looked at the abyss, and instead of turning away in terror, we have begun to measure its depth. As we move forward into the deepening shadows of the future, we must carry the burden of the witness with pride. We are the conscious heart of a cold machine. Every discovery we make, every equation we solve, and every mystery we unravel is a victory over the silence of the void. We are the only defense the universe has against the total reign of entropy, for while the machine seeks to break everything down into a uniform soup of radiation, we seek to build up. We create order, we store information, and we cherish the unique configurations of matter that allow life to flourish. The wet rock will not last forever. The sun will eventually claim its children, and the stars will one by one blink out until the sky is a wall of unbroken black. But that does not diminish the value of the now. The fact that we are here at all, that we have emerged from the chaos to look upon the eternal, is a miracle of physics. We are the ones who have realized that the clock is ticking, and in that realization, we have found the courage to keep watching the hands move. We are the fragile witnesses to the greatest show in existence, and as long as one mind remains to observe the turning of the gears, the universe remains a place of wonder rather than just a void of mathematics. We are the spark that allows the darkness to know itself, a brief and beautiful flame in the heart of the infinite night. The final rotation of our world does not arrive with a scream, but with the slow, rhythmic grinding of a machine that has finally run out of oil. Whether the asteroid known as AT-39 found its mark or drifted harmlessly into the black is a question that matters only to the brief inhabitants of the present. In the grand inventory of the cosmos, such a collision is but a single spark in a furnace that is slowly cooling toward the absolute. As we project our gaze forward, beyond the trivial spans of human history and into the deep time of the white dwarf era, we see the inexorable decay of the mechanisms that once gave the universe its motion. The great clockwork of the solar system, which once seemed so permanent and divine, is revealed to be a finite engine destined to seize up in the ultimate stillness of the void. The sun, our ancestral hearth, will eventually exhaust its primary fuel. It will swell into a red giant, a bloated and dying monarch that devours its closest children, Mercury and Venus, in a final fiery embrace. The Earth may be scorched to a cinder or pushed into a wider, colder orbit, but regardless of its physical position, its time as a cradle for consciousness will have long since passed. The oceans will have boiled away into a thick atmosphere of steam, and then even that will be stripped away by the solar winds until nothing remains but the raw, unblinking bedrock. This is the ruthless machine at work. It does not hate the life it fostered, nor does it cherish it. It simply follows the laws of thermodynamics, moving from a state of concentrated energy to a state of total dissipation. It is a transition from the complexity of a symphony to the uniform hum of a dead television screen. Beyond our local star, the same tragedy is playing out in every corner of the cosmos. The Milky Way will merge with Andromeda, their spiral arms tangling in a slow-motion collision that spans millions of years, eventually settling into a massive featureless elliptical galaxy. But even this new colossus is not eternal. The clouds of gas and dust that once birthed new stars will be depleted. The bright blue giants that burn hot and fast will be the first to go, leaving behind only the dim, red embers of M-dwarfs, the patient sentinels of the deepening night. These stars will cling to their heat for trillions of years, huddled in the darkness like the last survivors of a shipwreck, until they too flicker out. The tapestry of the night sky, once vibrant and crowded with light, will unravel thread by thread until the abyss is all that remains. We must imagine the universe billions of years from now as a vast, dark chamber where the gears have begun to rust. The expansion of space, driven by a force we barely comprehend, will have carried other galaxies far beyond our cosmic horizon. Any future observer born in this era would look up at a sky that is completely black, devoid of any hint that a greater universe ever existed. They would believe themselves to be alone in an infinite void, a single island of dying light in a sea of oblivion. This is the scale paradox at its most cruel. As the universe becomes larger, it becomes emptier, and the information that once connected us to the primordial past is erased by the stretching of light itself. The memory of the beginning is lost in the pursuit of the end. Eventually, even the atoms themselves may begin to fail. If the proton, the very foundation of matter, has a finite lifespan, then the solid ground beneath us will eventually dissolve into radiation. The mountains, the ruins of our cities, and the bones of our ancestors will evaporate into the vacuum. The only remaining structures will be the black holes, those dark hearts of dead galaxies that have devoured everything within their reach. For eons beyond counting, they will be the only things left, slowly leaking their mass back into the void through a process of quantum evaporation so slow it defies human language. They are the last remnants of the machine's great hunger, and when the last black hole finally vanishes in a microscopic pop of energy, the universe will reach its final state, heat death. In this state of maximum entropy, no more work can be performed. There is no heat, no cold, no light, and no shadow. There is only a uniform, tepid soup of particles, spread so thin that a single electron might wander for 1 trillion miles without ever encountering another. The machine has stopped. The gears have seized. The symphony has reached its final silent note. This is the catastrophe of equilibrium, a peace so absolute that it's indistinguishable from non-existence. The cosmos, which began in a roar of light and heat, concludes in a whisper of absolute zero. And yet, as we stand here in the middle of the story, looking toward that inevitable silence, we find a reason for melancholic optimism. The engine of the universe demands our eventual silence, but it cannot take away the fact that, for a brief epoch, we were here to witness its turning. We are the only part of the machine that ever stopped to ask how it worked. We took the raw, cold data of the stars and we turned it into poetry. We took the mathematical laws of gravity and motion, and we used them to build bridges and to launch ourselves into the heavens. We are the conscious heart of a cold machine, and our brief flash of awareness is the only thing that gives the void any meaning at all. Our greatest triumph is not that we survived, for nothing survives forever. Our triumph is that we understood. We looked at the inexorable path toward decay and we chose to measure it. We mapped the stars that would eventually die, and we named the galaxies that would eventually drift away. We found the beauty in the ruins before they were even built. Though we are less than a spark in the heart of the infinite night, we are the spark that allows the darkness to know itself. The universe is a grand, elaborate structure of cause and effect, a sequence of events that follows a script written in the language of energy and matter. But we are the ones who read the script. We are the ones who give the epochs their names and find the majesty in the mechanism. In the end, the engine will stop. The lights will go out, and the abyss will reclaim its own. But the silence that follows will be different because we were once here to speak. For a brief, shining moment in the history of time, the universe was not just a collection of particles and forces. It was a place of wonder, of love, of terror, and of curiosity. It was a place where a small, fragile species on a wet rock looked up at the vastness and dared to say, "I see you. The universe is silent, and it will be silent again for an eternity." But for a brief moment we spoke its language. We understood the music of the spheres, and in that understanding we became eternal in a way that the cold gears of the machine could never be. We were the witnesses, and that is enough.